Game number 13 of the FIDE World Chess Championship. We have Jan with the white pieces, Ding with the black pieces. I've read your feedback. We added the eval bar today. If either player wins this game with only one game remaining, they are a greater than 90% chance to become the world champion. So this is a big game. And we do have some chances for both sides coming up. Okay, so we see a Ruy Lopez, a6. And these are all pretty standard moves, so I'm going to go a little bit quick here. b5, bishop to b3, d6. All standard moves. And what we're going to find in the Ruy Lopez is usually white just gets a very slight advantage. And if you look at the eval bar, it's saying 0.1 or 0.0. That's pretty common, maybe even up to 0.2. And this is the first move that hasn't been played at the Grandmaster level, bishop to e3. So Jan plays the first new move. Really, I don't think there's anything super exciting about this move. I tried to dig into some different sidelines. Not much stands out to me. Usually in this position, rook to e1 is played as the main move. Knight a5, attacking the bishop, and c5. This is kind of a typical plan in the Ruy Lopez. Black creates this pawn structure, gets the queenside play, and usually you'll see white either play for d4 or route this knight over to the king side and go for kingside play. And we're going to see that from the black side, Ding gets some chances coming up very soon. So knight b to d2 by Jan, rook to e8, a4, h6, d4. Okay, here's the first break in the center, and this could liven the game up a bit. The idea with d4 is you could push the pawn to d5 if given the chance. So if Jan is able to push that pawn up to d5, that's a massive space advantage in the center, and it's going to lock out this bishop and lock out this knight. It's going to make this bishop a bad piece, and these pieces for white are going to have more flexibility. So d4 creates the threat of d5, and essentially Ding has to capture that pawn. So he takes back, and again, d5 is threatened by Jan. Ding needs to take. So after takes, let's look at the pawn structure. 2 pawns each on the queen side, A and B pawns. Jan has 4 pawns connected on the king side. Ding has what's called an isolated pawn. There's no pawns on the C or E files, so that D pawn is an isolated pawn separated from these. Another thing you can count is pawn islands. This is one pawn island, this is its own pawn island, and this is a pawn island over around the king. So 3 pawn islands for Ding, only 2 for Jan. That's an advantage for Jan. So pawn structure advantage. But there are some tactics forming, and Ding gets some play coming up, starting with knight to c4. So that knight that was on the rim comes to a strong square on c4, hits the pawn on b2, and threatens knight takes e3. And that would give Jan double isolated pawns. So essentially here, Jan needs to make a move that doesn't allow the double isolated pawns. That's the main thing. And he decides to capture the knight. And after b takes c4, now this former b pawn is connected to the d pawn, right? So there's no isolated d pawn anymore for Ding. This is a nice advanced pawn. And even though knight takes c4 was okay according to the engine, it actually preferred maybe playing a move like queen to e2. So this kind of let Ding equalize the position. That slight Ruy Lopez advantage is now gone for Jan. Pawn to f3. And we see a mistake already by Jan. And I think this is because the position was looking easier to play for black. There was this pressure on e4, double attack, and Jan kind of needed to find tactics to hold on to that pawn. The strongest move would have been queen to e2, and if knight takes e4, going for the pawn on c4, so pawn for pawn. Okay, f3 played in the game. Bishop to f8, top move by Ding. This lines the rook up with the bishop on e3, which threatens to play d5 because this pawn is pinned down to the bishop. Bishop retreats, and now d5. Ding is playing a perfect game so far, has a small advantage. We can see it on the eval bar, 0.4. Could he get a win in this game and have 2 wins in a row? That would be amazing, and then Jan would have to win in the last game. He takes d5, the best move. He cannot allow Ding to capture the pawn on e4. So he takes, knight takes back. Now this knight wants to head into f4, coming close to the white king. Bishop to e4, pinning the knight down to the bishop. Now Ding makes a mistake with rook to e5. As we've seen in previous games, Ding is fond of the rook lifts, and I find it really fascinating that we can notice these trends across games, and it's because we're so focused on this match that we're watching 10 games, 11 games, 12 games, 13 games of the same two players back and forth. Ding loves the rook lifts, and in this instance, it's a mistake. The top move is rook to b8, defending the loose bishop. This threatens knight to f4 again. Bishop takes d5 is almost forced. Queen takes d5. And Ding gets this comfortable bishop pair advantage with an open position. That would have been the best way to play it. But instead, Ding plays rook to e5. Jesse told me he almost had a heart attack after this move. He was cheering for Ding. And rook to c1 played in response, eyeing this pawn. Rook to c8 to defend it. Knight e2. Slight inaccuracy by Jan, but the position is really complicated. I don't think any other moves are really worth noting. Queen to e7, the computer slightly preferred queen to e8, but again, super complex position. Queen d4, f5. So Ding pushes the f-pawn up, attacking this bishop. And now we see an excellent move by Jan. Bishop to g3, leaves this bishop hanging and double attacks the rook. All of a sudden, the tables have turned and the position is starting to favor Jan again. We see the eval bar saying 0.1. And Ding decides to go for an exchange sacrifice. Rook takes e4. And after pawn takes, queen takes, the players swap queens. And now we get this imbalance. One rook for Jan and a bishop and pawn for Ding. So that's plus 1 material point for Jan. But Ding does have a little bit of extra activity. He still does have the bishop pair, which can be worth about half a point in a complex position. So take that 1 material point, half a point bishop pair, plus maybe a bonus for having the passed pawn. And that's where you get this 0.2 eval. Rook f to d1, knight to b4. The knight wants to head to d3, which is supported by 2 pawns. Rook to d7. This is active play by Jan. That's what you want to do with the rooks in the endgame. Bishop to c5 check. Bishop to c6. Excellent move. That was the only move to stay in the game. We still have an advantage for white. And now rook to c7, an excellent move back by Jan. The idea here is when you have 2 rooks against 1 in an endgame, you have that imbalance, 2 rooks against 1 rook and maybe a minor piece like we have here. You want to trade off one of the rooks if you're the side that has 2 rooks, on average. And the reason for this is because with the rooks coming off the board, you're the only player left with a rook, right? So that means in terms of horizontal and vertical directions, Jan will have the advantage because Ding doesn't have a rook to counter Jan's. Whereas when it's 2 versus 1, sometimes the side with 2 rooks, the rooks get in the way of each other. It's not as large of an advantage as 1 rook versus 0. So rook takes c7 played, bishop takes, and now bishop to d5, another excellent move by Ding. Look at how the knight supports the bishop. The knight cannot be kicked by a pawn. The bishop supports these 2 pawns. The pawns cannot really be attacked again. Everything looks solid for Ding. So how is Jan going to take advantage of having the extra rook? He plays knight to c3, and now knight to d3, a great find by Ding, attacking the pawn on b2, attacking the rook. And Jan is struggling to find anything with this advantage, and it's really dwindling. It's down to 0.1 now. Rook to c2 played. Bishop goes back. And now both sides try to improve the endgame a little bit, and then we see knight to c1 by Ding, attacking the rook. And the rook doesn't have very many squares. Jan moves it to e1, and then Ding just repeats, attacking this pawn and the rook again. Nothing better than rook e2. They repeat, draw agreed. So we had some back and forth play today. We have 1 game remaining. Tomorrow is a rest day, and then we'll have the final game after that. Ding will have the white pieces, and if that game is a draw, we're going to head to rapid tie breaks. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next recap.